What's up, Matt Plapp, live from Las Vegas for a restaurant expert roundup. Today, I had the catering coach, Sandy. What's going on?
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Matt. I've heard a lot about you and through some mutual friends, and so I'm glad to help out in any way I can.
Well, I hope it was all good. Hopefully that friend wasn't my wife, because some days that's not good. No.
Oh, it was good. It was good.
So I guess introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Okay, Sandy Korem. I'm from Dallas, and I have two companies. One started over 25 years ago called the Festive Kitchen, in which we are a caterer. We are a food manufacturer. We have two food shops, but man, I know catering because that's where we started. And then I started about a little over 10 years ago a company called the Catering Coach because I was encouraged by restaurant owners. I was a member of a little group of restaurant owners. We met all the time, and they said, Sandy, you need to help us out. And so that's kind of how that started. And that's where I am today in helping others, especially on the lines of profitability, because that's where it's all at.
Oh yeah. Profit's not a dirty word.
No.
And I think in the catering world, that's actually ironically my question, I think, come around that is that it could get you. I was talking to a restaurant recently. Was talking about running out of food or having too much food, and you got a price for those things. So I want to get into that, but I know profit can be slippery when it comes to catering more than me and my son coming through the drive-through and getting one item.
Yes.
So we'll dig into it right off the bat. Yes. So I got three questions. First one, adjusting catering prices versus dine-in, because I get a lot of restaurants that say, Matt, we want to be big with catering because they all see it as an easier win because you're feeding 100 people. You get a chance to get 100 people that like your product. I want to go to that restaurant. But I would imagine there's got to be a science to the pricing there. Yeah,
there's a science to the pricing. But the first thing you have to realize is that the food must travel. If you don't understand that the food travels, then you are going to lose money before you even start. Because anytime that food, I always like to say, anytime the food goes out the back door, it costs you a lot more money than when it's sitting there, in your restaurant kitchen and you've got 10 feet to where the customer is. So that's where you have to start, is realizing in your head that same chicken that's on that restaurant menu in no way can cost the same as at a catered event. I always like to use the illustration. Somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I loved that chicken parm that you have. Can you cater it in my backyard for 100 people next week? They're coming over, pre-COVID times. They're coming over, but they're going to be outside. And what's it going to cost me? And what happens is that the restaurant owner takes his menu, gives it to them and says, oh, right here, it's only $18. So it'll be $18 a person for that chicken. Well, right there, boom, you've lost money before you even start. So they've got to realize that it costs for travel, it costs for a different staff, it costs for all that plasticware or glass or whatever it is you're going to use. It costs for the ice that you've got to have. It costs you. A lot of people say, well, I'm going to throw in my plates and all that stuff in the restaurant because I own it. Well, you got to pack it, you got to clean it, you got to haul it. Same way with the ice. You have a 600-pound ice machine and they think, oh, that's really easy. I got the ice, no charge. Yeah, right. You got to pack it in the kitchen. You got to store it in your freezer. You got to haul it in the ice chest. You got to get it in the van and get it over there, and then you got to bring it back and clean it all. So all those little things add up, and you lose your shirt if you don't know how to price.
Yeah, we were in the boat business in a prior life, and the easy part was you buy a boat and it comes from the factory and the customer gets it. Well, that was always the great part. There was a company called Skeeter Bass Boats out of Kilgore, Texas, that their bragging point was the boat showed up rigged. They're ready for the customer. Well, then we started looking at it, and no, we had 6 to 8 hours of $100 an hour mechanic actually getting the boat, fixing this, fixing that. The different elements, you got to put oil in it. You got to do this. There's all these elements. And it's the same in the restaurant world. Is that you mentioned that ice? I mean, the ice machine. Yeah, you cater 100 meals, and your ice machine you spent $5,000 on now doesn't work because of the overuse.
And what they think is, well, the customer's not going to pay for that. Well, here's a little illustration of like plastic plates. Okay, they can, a plate, a napkin, a fork, a cup, whatever. That's what $1.50 your cost. I don't know. Something like that. Okay, so they just think, oh, I'm just going to throw that in with the food. Well, you add all that up of all that throwing it in, and that's a lot of money. And so a lot of people get afraid, and they think, well, I can't charge anyone for that. Well, you line item in it, and you say that the plates and glasses and all this, whatever, or you make a little profit on it. And if the customer says, I can't believe that you're charging me for those plates and napkins, come on, then here's a golden little question answer to them. You tell them, oh, I thought this was a convenience I was providing for you. No problem. I won't provide it for you. You need to have 200 plates, 400 napkins, 150 cups, this many forks and such. It's got to be there 2 hours prior. And then they go, oh, I get it. So don't be afraid to charge for it.
And I could see as you were talking through that, I'm picturing that it would be a great thing for that restaurateur to do that first event if they're not doing them.
Yep.
If they wanted to really write down everything. A friend of mine told me, this was about 10 years ago, I was looking at getting an office. He said, Matt, every 15 minutes for the next 2 weeks, write down what you're doing, where you're doing it, and we're going to classify them. So that in 2 weeks, you can look back and say, hey, would I have been at the office or at a client's or on the road? And we looked and said, oh, you'd only be at an office for 2 hours, don't get an office. And so the same thing here, this customer, when you're doing that catering, write down everything, napkins, forks, the little, what are those little things you light? I can't think of the name of it.
Sterno, all that stuff. Yep. It's money, and the van and the people, they also throw in their labor. I mean, I could go on and on about the pricing. Okay. So you just tell me how much you want to know. But the bottom line is it travels, and so they've got to think of all of those little things that are in a restaurant, but they're not out in the middle of a cow pasture or in somebody's backyard, and you got to get it from point A to point B, and so you got to make money on that.
Okay, I love it. So next question. I imagine it would be a terror to be at a wedding or a company event or a bar mitzvah, whatever, and run out of food. How do you understand? Because you're going to have waste. You're going to have me that comes up and gets 3 scoops of mac and cheese versus 1.
Yeah.
How do you understand the quantities you're going to need? And I guess do you price in waste that you might end up with afterwards?
Yes. Okay. It starts with what, obviously what the entire menu is. And I know that you think, well, that's kind of strange, but it really does. We've got it down to a science of, if you're going to have 2 meats, it's going to be like 3.5 to 4 ounces per person of each meat. Some people go, oh, well, only 60% are going to eat beef and 40 are chicken. So I only want 40% of chicken and 60 of beef. You will run out every time. Okay. So you've got to have everything for everyone. Okay. So like somebody like you that wants to 3 servings of the mac and cheese. But what I like to tell people also is that, let's just assume we're gonna get back to where we are buffets or stations. Okay, I like to have my staff serve to the clients or the customers the expensive food, the beef tenderloin, the shrimp, whatever, so that they know the amount that we are providing for each person, 5 ounces, whatever, and they serve it to them. And then if somebody says, I want more, say, as soon as everyone's through the line, as soon as everybody's been served, no problem. Come on back and you can have more. And on shrimp, I always on the menu say, I give them the count per pound, 16, 20, 20, 25, whatever the count per pound of that shrimp is. And then I say in my proposal, 4 pieces of shrimp per person or 5 or whatever it is you're going to provide. And so when you have that on a proposal and the client comes back to you and says, oh, I don't think that's enough shrimp. Well, you've already got it priced. And you can go back in and say, okay, they want 6 pieces of shrimp, and you up the price because they're asking for more food. Yes, you have to have extra food, a little bit extra. And the reason for that is I always use the cow pasture illustration. And I've been in the middle of cow pastures many times. You're there and somebody drops a beef tenderloin or a steak or a whatever. you're screwed, because there is no kitchen there that you can go to and get another one. So you've got to have some backup, and you've got to have that price into your proposal, regardless of whether they use it or not, so that you're covered. And so you have to look at the entire menu, what the portions are, and you can explain that to your customer. If they want to have more, then you need to charge them for it. So I hope that answers that question for you.
No, it does. I think that's huge. I remember Shaheen Kazemi has a company called Simply Catering in Cincinnati. He was on one of my podcasts we shot, MPTV, and he talked about that exact thing, that you've got to make sure you don't want to run out, but you also have to price it in there. Otherwise, you're going to lose money and you're going to run out of food all the time. Because if you're losing money every time you do a deal, excuse me, if you lose money every time you do a deal, then you're going to keep skimping on the food, and then you're going to get to a point where it runs into disaster.
Yeah. And then word of mouth, let me just tell you, if you run out all the time, they're not going to call you back. Okay. Yeah. So always price whatever you're putting in there, so that you are covered. And it's kind of a frightening thing when you start, because you're like, oh my gosh, but it makes you measure the MAC. Yep. It makes you go, okay, this is a serving, that's 5 ounces or whatever, and it makes you count the shrimp. And here's another one that my staff hates. If you're at a plated dinner, and in different parts of the country, people do more plated dinners than in other parts, okay? So if you're at a plated dinner, oh my gosh, you don't want to run out. Why? Because the last person is not getting that food. So I always tell them, you got to count the beans. You've got to count the asparagus. And my staff looks at me like, she is insane. No, I've been there when we weighed the beans and went, oh, there's so many per pound. And we got there. And when you're doing 8, haricot vert, whatever on the plate, and you run out, you are in deep yogurt. So count the beans, count the asparagus, and make sure that everything is just detail, counted. That's the best thing I can say.
Cool. And love it. And last question is catering, is selling catering. Because,
yep.
We work with a couple companies that, like Apple Spice, that just do catering brands. We work with restaurants that, are sit down restaurants that people come in like, oh, I wish you could cater this or cater that. And there's a lot of places your success rate is based on, I guess, how much you sell it. But can a restaurant succeed with doing catering as far as quantity wise without having something or someone selling?
Okay. I would start this. I'm going to say how I would start. And then if you see that it could explode later and you have the revenue, then pay for a salesperson. My quote is, you need to, besides social media, okay,
yep.
Or your database, which if you don't have an email database, besides those two things, you need to let dining in sell catering out. Okay. And what I mean by that is not just a piece of paper that's got a menu on it, especially if you're doing to go. You're going to take that, oh, that looks nice, you're going to throw it away. I'm talking about that you have a little piece of dessert, or you have a little tiny hors d'oeuvre or something that you give them if they're seated in your restaurant, or if it's to go, that can only be found on your catering menu. And they go, man, that was good. Okay. How do I get that? Well, it's not here. It's on our catering menu. And you need to have the names of the people that are dining with you so that you can market to them. So you let dining in, which you've already got, sell catering out.
Wow.
Then eventually, I think you could get a salesperson, but I'm going to share something with you that's contrary to what I just said. Every time we've tried to, and I've been in business a long time, we've tried to have a quote unquote salesperson. It never works for us for someone hitting the streets. I know we may be the odd bird, but we have a tendency to have different kinds of contracts, like for different kinds of food service contracts that a lot of people wouldn't have, that we go after, repeat contracts. And that's what helped us during the past year. We do a lot with NCAA, and they're not going anywhere. Those guys are still playing. And so you've got to think of the different avenues for sales. And so every time we've had to have a salesperson on the street, it didn't work for us. But I'm not saying you can't have it or they're not great. I'm just saying for us, it did not work.
Yeah.
The social media is the way to go, and dining out and sell catering out.
Well, I've seen that as well. I've got restaurants that have tried to have a salesperson full time because they have multiple brands, multiple locations. I've also seen it where their favorite bartender, like, oh yeah, you could do this. It's a different world when you're walking into a business cold. They don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you, and you're trying to get them to buy catering. But I've always told clients, like, there's one audience that is the easiest to get to convert to catering. It's the people who already know, like, and trust you that are in your four walls.
Yes. Yes.
If you can do something in-house, like I love the dessert idea. I'd never heard that. It's gold.
Yeah.
Or you can do some engaging Facebook and Instagram advertising, and then use your text and email database. Try and narrow and find the people in there that make decisions like that so that you can use that more often.
Yeah, it's gold. It's golden, and besides the dessert, or another thing you can do is a little hors d'oeuvre. That'll get them every time, because especially like we morphed into having food shops because we had so many people loving our food that we went, maybe it'll work. Well, I mean, it's been huge. And so one of our things, and here's a recipe, is a zinger, which is a bacon wrapped apricot with a slice of pickled jalapeno, not fresh. I mean, you have one of those baked, you put that in a wrap it up, whatever, for them to taste. They will love it. Something that they would love, and the only place they can get it is if it's catered. And so I want to say one other thing. When you mentioned the bartender, one important thing that restaurant owners need to understand is that the people that are doing their catered events are different than the people that are working in their restaurants in two ways. Number one, their personalities. The bartenders in the restaurants, you want to upsell everything, have a great, the whole 9 yards. In someone's home, at a corporation, they need to be a really great bartender, know their stuff, but melt into the wall because it needs to be a different personality. And then the other thing is, a lot of times your catering staff is paid totally different than the restaurant staff. So you've got to tell them from the beginning they're going to make more per hour being catering, and then we'll get tips, but it's a totally different way that they're paid than the restaurant guys. So you got to start that one out different also. So.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I think at some point we got to do a webinar on this because you're a wealth of knowledge. You've been doing this forever. And this is a topic that a lot of restaurants, I think, are missing the boat on when it comes to revenue because they're either and profits because they're just not doing a lot of things right.
Yeah. Let me say one thing. This fourth quarter, I think, is going to explode because there's such pent-up demand. So get your catering in order now. Don't wait until October. You will, if you don't know your pricing and have your menus done, man, it's gone. Somebody else is going to get it. But get it in order because it's going to be a huge revenue stream, major.
I agree completely. And there's a lot of businesses that are going to be going back to offices. There's going to be a lot of, hey, you know what? We're having a company Christmas party this year, wherever they're at. So I noticed that on your website, the Catering Coach, you guys coach a lot of this stuff. I guess tell everybody what you do and if they need help, how they can reach you.
Sure. First of all, my website is thecateringcoach.com. And what we do is we're membership oriented. And one of our the best things we have is what we call the VIP group. And it's a group of CEOs of caterers, and a lot of them are restaurant owners from across the United States and Canada. And, we get together, pre-COVID, we got together 3 times a year in that person's restaurant, in that person's catering business, in their building. Man, you can't ask for more one-on-one help. Right now we're doing Zoom calls every 2 weeks so that we keep up with each other. But you got a problem, you put it out there, on a daily basis with email. Also, it has personal coaching with me, personal coaching with my team member coach. And so we can solve what you need from conception of catering. You come and you say, man, I don't even know what to cater. I'm a restaurant. What should I cater? Or, what kind of menu should I have? And we help you with that and pricing all the way to how to set up the event, how to tear down the event, how to pack the event. People lose money on packing. So we can take you from 0 to whatever you need to be in catering. And that's kind of what the Catering Coach does.
Well, I love it. Well, I appreciate your time. Make sure I'll check out the cateringcoach.com. Have you ever thought about writing a catering book?
Well, I've got a course. I've got a course right now that's drop off catering, and it was done pre-COVID, like March, March of last year's when it launched. Woohoo! Great timing. So it's perfect for somebody that wants to look at drop off catering, but it's got a little bit different because we're not exactly back to pre-COVID yet. But it's a course. Contact me. I'll be glad to tell you about that and give you some information about it.
Cool. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to doing some other events with you in the future and dropping more knowledge on restaurants so they can succeed and profit on catering like they never had before.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Sandy. Bye-bye.
Bye.